Firstly, I want to say what an honor it is to receive this nomination. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to consider ways in which we might do ministry together on the islands and the inlets. I grew up in northwestern Ontario on a small farm and trap line before we moved even further into the bush. And a lot of friends I met on my journey called it the middle of nowhere, but for us it was our somewhere. My dad was a logger, so the bush was our backyard. I probably would have stayed there had it not been for a couple of great teachers who encouraged me and then told me that I was going to university. Going off to the big city was a very scary thought. It was while I was at university that I decided I wanted to be baptized. I'd been thinking about it for a long time. I'd had lots of Christian education in public schools and vacation Bible school, but a church wasn't ever very accessible. I presented myself to the university chaplain to be baptized. I believe God has a way of placing people in our lives, and this began a lifelong relationship with a priest who was my chaplain and spiritual mentor, and through it helped me discover the Anglican Church, which has become my home. 5 years later, I would be made a deacon in the same chapel in which I was baptized and confirmed. It was from this earliest relationship that I learned the value of daily prayer, and I began to learn how to construct a rule of life for myself. My practice consists of a daily prayer, annual retreat, having a confessor, and being connected to communities that pray for me as I pray for them, such as the Society of St. John the Evangelist. Eating a healthy diet and a weekly exercise program, for me it's all about taking care of the gift of life God has entrusted to me so that I can be effective in my daily life as a disciple of Jesus and in my ordained vocation. During my seminary days, when I was involved in something called Teens Encounter Christ, the youth version of Cursillo, a renewal program that created an instant community of for young adults. It was in that experience that I learned at a heart level the overwhelming presence of God's love. What a privilege it has been to have had so many opportunities for ministry, from rural and isolated multi-point parishes to being a university chaplain and interim ministry to serve as a priest in an inner-city team ministry. The ministry on the downtown east side of Vancouver required deep listening to the community to learn how the church could best respond to those whom our care systems had overlooked. Young women who were trapped in addiction, had their children taken away, and had no access to recovery options. We developed partnerships, located funding, and worked hard to create a successful program which put countless women back on their feet and helped them reunite with their families. I believe this is what Jesus had in mind for us as church to be about: restoring, reconciling, and healing broken, wounded souls, demonstrating in word and deed God's love. I had the amazing opportunity to work in the Episcopal Church in the U.S. and alongside some truly amazing people. This vantage point allowed me to see the breadth of expressions of church and discover some new and creative ways of being Christian community. It also provided me with a wide range of experiences in other parts of our Anglican communion and the constant rediscovery that we are far more alike than different. My previous bishop invited me back to Vancouver to share some of the experience I had learned, providing ways to equip lay leaders and clergy in strengthening their congregation's witness, being intentional about vocations and vocational development, and creating attractive ways for people to be generous. In our Métis culture, one way to communicate affection for someone is by gently teasing. However, I wasn't meaning to do that the day I told my parish secretary, who is also a friend and a confidant, that I was going skydiving on the weekend. It would be hard for me to describe the look on her face. I cannot recall what she said precisely, but "Are you out of your mind?" might be close. When she realized she wasn't talking me out of it, I had to promise to let her know that I would call her as soon as I got back on the ground. Later that week, still high on adrenaline, I invited my bishop to come along with me the next time. I told him it was great fun, but for some reason he wasn't as interested as I thought he should be. After all, this time, I often still hear him frequently introducing me as the one who invited him to jump out of a perfectly good plane. Whether skydiving or cliff diving, I've always liked to try new adventures and take reasonable risks at new things. I certainly felt that I was taking risks when I left the bush for the big city, or when I moved to live in New York, even a bigger city. They all had risks attached, and they brought about life-changing perspectives. I think that's what God has in mind for us, to put ourselves out there, be partners in God's mission, allow the Holy Spirit to work through us, and to discover how we can best use the gifts God has given us. I truly believe that while the church keeps changing, as it does, God is always in it with us, reminding us to trust, nudging us forward into God's kingdom, God's reign of justice and mercy and peace.